Okay. So, I guess to start off, before we get into the actual case, let's get a little bit of background on the sexual harassment law that we read up on. Does somebody have any, just kind of give us a working definition of what sexual harassment is?
Well, it was anything that was unwanted and made the workplace uncomfortable, and they kind of, in different ways and places, made it. They have the pro bono, which is the favors for successful employment or advancement, and then anything. Then they also had the hostile work environment factor of it, that just whether it's the language or posters or anything that continue to make it uncomfortable.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so one of the things that I took from the reading was um, just like a really basic definition, like you were talking about, is an unwelcome sexual advance. Um, and yeah, so you talked about kind of the two types that we have. We have the quid pro quo, which is basically when you get a proposed exchange of job benefits for sexual favors.
Thank you. That's a lot different than pro bono, which is what I said.
You're
Sorry.
fine, you're fine. And then hostile work environment is instead of just being one isolated incident, it's kind of a collective environment where um, someone is hostile or offensive, and there might be multiple parties that are hostile and offensive, and so the company can be liable for that. So, alrighty. So now that we have kind of a basic idea, based on Martinez's story, does her situation constitute sexual harassment? What do you guys think?
I
Absolutely.
think absolutely.
And why?
Yes.
And I guess why do you think it constitutes sexual harassment? And which type do you?
Well, it's the hostile work environment. She can't even. He's reaching in her shirt for crying out loud. He's physically. There's that line. He's touching her. He's saying things. He's making her uncomfortable to the point where she is stressed out and crying when she's at work.
Hmm. But she also does feel like she's going to lose her job, so I think it can, it's not for promotion or advancement in work, but also just keep her job.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's both.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, definitely a hostile work environment, and even though there wasn't, like an explicit, sleep with me or you'll lose your job, she's feeling that way, and so I think there's definitely some grounds for
Hmm.
the quid pro quo also.
Yeah. Yeah, because she's not standing up for herself either. She's kind of allowing it to happen, even though she doesn't want it to happen. She's not saying no.
But in that, they kind of talked about that where you feel like you can't say no, or else she would lose her job. And that
Right.
was one of the things they mentioned too. Like a reasonable woman would, whether or not somebody else would consider that to be um, offensive, and thankfully this other coworker views it as that as well.
Well, and even in the reading where she was talking to her friend about the incident with putting his hand in their shirt, he even said, like, and just like, don't scream and laugh. I'll just deny it. Like he felt like he could get away with it, like that no one would
Hmm.
believe her.
Yeah. I think it also comes down to her personality, the type, is she strong-willed? Is she weak? And it seems to me that she's more on the weaker side, because sometimes you get trapped in that situation and you kind of close yourself off,
Yeah.
and shut down.
So I think
Well,
she was not only worried about her job, but she was also worried about her husband and how he would
Exactly.
respond to it. Because it said, his temper. If he heard about this, he'd take matters into his
Hmm.
own hands. Like, so she's not only just juggling her work environment, she's having to juggle her home environment and how it affects every aspect of her life, not just her work.
Exactly. And so right there, it seems like she's afraid of her husband.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought reading through the case, it was pretty like blatantly obvious that this is sexual harassment. That this is obviously affecting her even outside of work. But one thing that it talked about in the in my preparation that I kind of didn't think about was, it says, from reading the note on sexual harassment, do you think DaCosta, which is the guy who overheard the phone conversation, got accurate advice when he called the counsel's office? What did y'all think of that?
Yes, I think so. In the section of the reading with the note on the law of sexual harassment, it was pretty clear that if you knew about it and you ignored the situation, that you could be held accountable for it. And where he is in a supervisory position, it would look like, as a supervisor, that he allowed it to continue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because they even said it's the easy part. You're required to call our EEO. Like,
Right.
that's what the law office says, like, you're required.
Okay, so I'm glad you brought that up, because I didn't think about this when I read through, but it says if you go back to the reading and see what the lawyer actually tells him, she says to contact Lone Star's EEO office
Mm-hmm.
and not the federal EEOC. So what are your thoughts? Do you think that was a breach of protocol, or do you think that kind of gives an unfair advantage to the company? And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I thought we read in that it's supposed to be taken care of on the employee level first, and then it goes, right? When we were reading.
Yeah,
That's what I understood.
That's how I understood it. You're supposed to take care of it internally and then
Yeah.
move forward. Like, here's your steps. You apply within your internal, it's internal procedures, and then you contact the EEOC.
Yeah, it's like chain of command. You got to follow the steps and make sure. And then maybe if the company didn't do anything, then you can go around them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it says pretty explicitly that first you pursue it with the employer, but then in the federal system it says victims who choose to use the federal system must file. So if the company takes care of it, they don't have to go to that point.
Right. Good. Okay, so a follow-up question to that. Why might a lawyer representing the company insist on instituting a formal investigatory process?
Well, in the interview with the HR director at the hospital, one of her points about HR in general, which I think is what they're talking about here, is that their job is to make sure that their company does not get sued. And so they are supposed to be the ones that run interference and take care of that problem. Then there's a paper trail.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest thing, but also I think the HR, at least what I got from my lady, is they're supposed to protect both sides of the party. And I think it's hard sometimes for that HR person to be not swayed by the company, because that's where their paycheck's coming from. Like, I can't imagine, I don't know how many people are going to HR, but I think that would be a tough position to put yourself in, where you're trying to be respectful of the company and of the employee. You're trying to look out for both people's best interests.
Yeah, I agree.
But looking for both people's best interest is taking care of the employee, so that as a company you are taking care of the situation, and that in turn takes care of the company. So it's a two-edged sword, but it's also beneficial to both sides. Because if I was an owner or higher up and an HR person had this going on, it'd be like, we have got to stop this problem right now. That would be a first priority.
Well, and I think one thing that was amazing was, like, I think, was it Japan where it was grounds for imprisonment? I was just like, rock on.
No, it was Brazil.
Oh, okay.
1 to 2 years of imprisonment in Brazil.
But then, I'm sorry, I don't have documents in front of me. But one of the things that I think is, I just lost my thought. Well, then it's harder, or you would want to make sure that you have absolute evidence. And I think that's a really hard thing to have evidence of.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of goes back to what we were talking about last week, how it can be hard to find evidence of, it was talking about discrimination based on religion or race or things like that, that when it comes to a legal case, it can be kind of hard to pinpoint certain evidences. And I think the same can probably be said of sexual harassment. It might be kind of hard to go back and get hard evidence that this took place, but if you have a good formal investigatory process in place, at least that way you can say, well, here's what we do in this situation, and here's what we've uncovered. So if that's already in place, I think it kind of puts everybody at a better advantage.
It protects everybody by having those
Right.
plans in place.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't think it would be appropriate to try to do like a sting operation where she goes in undercover, with a microphone or camera,
Yeah.
and have him do it again, because that's not protecting her,
Mm-mm.
in order to get your evidence. I don't think that's the right way to try to do it.
I don't
Right.
think she would have done it. I don't think she would have cooperated.
Well,
I
and
think
it even said in that note on the laws that the point of these laws is to prevent it from happening again, and so forcing someone to go in basically is a sting operation is kind of not the point here. You don't. That's not what you want. So.
I think it would have been important to maybe interview other secretaries, to find out if there's a history of that with that person.
Yeah, that's a great point. And depending on what their process is, that may be part of. We don't know, but that may be part of their process for how they
So
investigate.
I know for me, I had a professor tell me that one of the ways you can kind of document it if you're kind of concerned about it is to send yourself an email on the day it occurred and like kind of describe the situation, and that can count as evidence moving forward if it's because it shows that you've been like logging it, and most likely people aren't going to be like spending that much time logging something and making it up.
That's a good idea.
That is really good advice. My wife works for a doctor's office in town, and her office manager was notoriously kind of lazy. She'd take off from work for hours at a time, and so she was worried that since the work wasn't getting done, that my wife was going to be held responsible. And so I told her to start doing exactly that, make a log of when she leaves and what's going on. And it actually ended up saving her job because they had a meeting with the doctors, and the office manager tried to basically shift all the responsibility to my wife, and my wife was like, "Well, I actually have a log here," and so was able to go back and
Wow.
yeah. So that's
Good
really
for
good advice, I
her.
think.
Good for her. Wow.
So,
Well, to play devil's advocate, I know there are people that will use this to manipulate those above them. And so it would be important to log, if you were the supervisor as well, being threatened from the other direction.
Yep.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely.
I also like how the photo for this week's overview showed it where it was the woman that was being the predator, and the man that was the one, because it happens, but
Mm-hmm.
you just don't hear or see about that more often. And you can even think about that with young teenagers dating. You always are concerned about the girl, but you hardly ever think about the boy. And so since I have mostly boys and my oldest just started dating, I have to also tell him, you need to be careful. If there's a girl that comes on too strong, you need to get away.
Yeah, absolutely. Sexual harassment, I think, obviously can happen either way. So,
Well, and it could happen with women approaching women or men approaching men. Like, it's not gender specific that it has to be both genders involved. I think it can be anybody making anyone feel uncomfortable based on those descriptions given.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, so for this, is everyone okay with moving on?
Yes.
Okay. So it asked me to ask one student their opinion, and if it's okay, I'd like to kind of pick on you for a second, Sharon. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Okay. So it says, how would you evaluate Jack DaCosta's options at this point, and what do you think he should do?
I think he's in a tough spot because he does have responsibility to make the company aware, but yet he doesn't have enough evidence to actually say she named Ron French. She didn't specifically name him. She doesn't want to do anything about it. So I think he's in a really tough spot. I think if it were me, I may have prodded around the office a little bit more, maybe talked to some secretaries just to see if anybody else had any, feelings toward Ron French that were not appropriate, and they're afraid of him as well.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So if I'm kind of getting what you're saying, basically he kind of has two routes, and one of them is to investigate more and to basically make things known, or basically to just do nothing.
I don't know that I would have done nothing. I guess his other option could have been to approach Ron French and say, hey, I'm hearing some complaints. Knock it off. But I don't know. That doesn't really protect Julia. So.
But
Right.
he's Ron's supervisor, right?
Yeah.
That's the chain of command. So
I
he
thought they
really
were
would have had.
No, I thought it was.
I think they're co-workers. They're on the same level.
Okay.
And French is her supervisor.
Okay.
So he's not in this chain at all, I don't think.
Okay.
But he's just aware of it.
Okay.
Yep, exactly. So they're at the same level. Like I said, he's not really in her chain of command for that issue, and so it talks about in the case that he kind of plays around with the idea of not doing anything. He's very timid to come forward about it. When he talks to her, he's like she makes him promise he won't do anything, and he doesn't make that promise. But I think it's safe to say that he's considering, not doing anything about it because she asked him not to.
Yeah, but I don't know. I just think that's so wrong. I think no matter what, he's obligated by law to report it no matter what. I don't care if it happened or not. No matter what, he's got to report it and then let them investigate it, and if she doesn't want to pursue it any further, but he overheard, no matter what, I'm black and white on this. I think, he just needs to go and do it.
Well, and I think they planned that they would meet again later in the day, is what the reading said. And so if nothing else, he could report, this is the conversation I overheard. I suspect that she's referring to so-and-so, but I don't know.
Right.
So he doesn't have to name any names besides saying this is the conversation I overheard from one of the secretaries in the, he doesn't even have to name her, I don't think. I don't know.
Well, and it's anonymous, right? I mean, is
Yeah.
it like, it's not like he has to be like, I am this person, and I was surprised that he talked to her about it, honestly. I feel like he should have just reported what he heard and then left it alone, because
Yeah, me too.
obviously if you go and approach someone that's having a really hard time, that's being sexually harassed at work, they're going to be, most likely are going to be embarrassed and feel awkward about it. If they're not reporting it themselves, they're not going to want someone else to talk about it. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Well, and just like you saw, she was very defensive about it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like that. If you guys watch Seinfeld, it's like that one episode at the end where that guy's getting carjacked, and they're all just standing around laughing and videoing it, and then they end up going to jail because they didn't do anything about it, and that was like the law, and so it's, because if he doesn't do anything about it, it's just going to keep continuing to happen, and like Sharon said, you don't know how many past secretaries he's harassed or whatever, he's just gonna be allowed to do whatever the heck he wants.
And if it escalates, then he's in even bigger trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right. And so I completely agree with what's being said, that basically I'm also kind of black and white in this. I think that there's no reason basically that someone that he Jack shouldn't go forward and report this. But for the sake of the discussion, it's having me play devil's advocate a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the questions it asks is, it says, for the students who say to report, ask them what they will explain to Julia Martinez about their decision. Are they willing to get her fired over this?
How would she get fired over it, though? Because she's not in the wrong.
Especially where he already knows, and she can say, no, I already spoke to DaCosta, and he knows I was afraid of this, and now I'm being fired.
Mm-hmm.
Then that would just be more evidence I mean, I am in agreement with the ones who say it's black and white. As a decent person, as a human being, to see someone, whether it's a woman or whoever, it happens to be Julia this time, if she's being treated this way, as a human being, there needs to be something done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
So
and
go ahead.
I was going to say, because of the downsizing, you know, her job in one way might be in jeopardy anyways, just because of downsizing. And
Right.
again, being kind of devil's advocate, what if it was, you know, somebody starts saying, well, she's just doing this so she doesn't lose her job. You know, again, that's not the case, or none of us feel that that's the case in this situation. But even if they did downsize, she would have to keep her job, I would think, just because the company would have to prove that they didn't do that for any other reason.
But it opens up an investigation. So if that is what she's doing, and they investigate and find out that's what she's doing, then they know.
Right.
There
But
needs
doesn't
to
it
be an
go back?
investigation to find the answer one way or the other.
Yep.
Okay, but don't think of it this way too. I'm this for my black and white scenario. When you get hired, a new position, doesn't the company go have a policy and go through all the paperwork and of your rights and everything, you know, and then don't they sign it? So she can prove right there, you know, it is my right to, you know, whatever she wants to do to protect her job. You know, that is what she's supposed to do. And same with the other guy for turning to do the investigation. You know, it's company policy. We are supposed to report, blah, 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 blah.
But I will tell you, I've been in a position with a company where they wanted to get rid of the employee, and I don't want to say made up. They made me document minute things that we wouldn't have fired someone else over to have legal grounds to fire someone over. Does that make sense? Like they found, oh, they took a longer lunch. Oh, they cost the company blah, 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 blah dollars. Like when a company wants to get rid of someone, they find the way to legally do it so that the person who's getting fired feels like, well, yeah, they did. Like, I can't tell you how many meetings I had to have, like, hey, I need to have you pulled in, and always the HR person was there. Here's some things that are going on, and it's not necessarily because of the work. Yes, the work was part of it, but I think we even read, was it the vignettes that we were reading about, that one of the cases was that way, that they had enough legal reasons to do it that they couldn't prove that the whole reason for them being fired was discrimination. They had some actually legitimate things, and that's what I experienced in the workforce is when our company wanted to get rid of somebody, we then started documenting to make sure that that could happen legally.
I mean, that's in any company. It's all political. It's all on who you know, who likes you, who likes who doesn't like who.
Yeah.
That's everywhere.
Okay, so let's talk about it from... Oh, go ahead.
If they're downsizing, it might be a way that DaCosta's protecting his job. If that's an issue with the harassment from the other guy, then they can just use the downsizing as an excuse and get rid of him.
Yep. Because did Julie ever name the harasser? Or did he just say her boss? I can't remember. In the reading.
She just said her boss.
Okay.
She doesn't name him by name.
But that too, the guy thinks it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So from the company's side of things, not from a legal standpoint, does this harassment claim prevent her from being fired for other reasons?
I think it does.
Yeah, for not reporting it.
Okay.
Now ask the question again.
So from the company's side, does her filing a sexual harassment claim prevent her from being fired for other reasons, like we talked about the downsizing? If they could find some other way.
I agree with Jennifer. I don't think it does. I think, just like I gave the example, if there's a reason to get rid of someone and there's enough legal reason to get rid of someone, then that's what companies will do. I don't think it can prevent her from being fired.
I think they might have to take extra precautions.
Yes.
It might take them longer to fire her than they might have otherwise done it. But if they have the evidence, who's going to really, say much? But, yeah.
Well, and again, I think they would have to say, we got rid of this percentage from this department. She was one of those percentages, and this is how we chose the ones that stayed. You know, they would, like you said, they would have to be very careful to cover their bases to make sure that, you know, there was no liability somewhere else.
Yeah. So do you think, I mean, so let's say just for the sake of argument that as part of the downsizing, she gets fired. Could she use that as evidence to support her sexual harassment claim? Or could there feasibly be a way that the company eliminates all doubt?
Probably. Yeah, I think she could probably use it against him. But I don't know, just her personality, the way it's showing.
She wouldn't.
No, she wouldn't. Exactly. She wouldn't do it.
I think she would have to report it beforehand. Before the cuts were being made, that information would need to be documented.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is another argument for reporting it right away, so that if something like that were to happen, she would be covered.
Well, but I even think with it being documented, if they have other legitimate legal reasons to terminate her, the company still has the right to do that.
Right.
It doesn't matter if she files the claim or not. If the company has legal, legitimate reasons to fire her, they can still fire her.
Right.
I think the fact that she didn't want to report it shows that she's not trying to do anything or file anything to try and prevent herself from getting laid off.
Well, I think too, she I was gonna say, sorry. I think we have to be careful about what the company uses as legal reasons to fire her. If it's her boss saying things and it's the one that's sexually harassing her, like his word doesn't count really. You know what I mean? Like it has to be a separate performance sort of thing because he could make up stuff or say things because she's not doing what he wants her to do, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So
I think DaCosta ought to say, I'm going to go say something. Would you like to come with me so I can back you up right then and there about what I heard? Because I think it does need to be said. I think it does need to be reported. And I think it's very, very important that HR and their investigation process have the proper training to do it correctly so that all of the repercussions that she's afraid of can be avoided.
yeah, absolutely. So kind of going off that, let's say DaCosta were to report this. What should he report? Should he give names? Should he give specifics? How should he report it to the EEO office?
Well, I think that because he doesn't know for sure, because she never named, it was just her boss, I think it's hard to give names. You know what I mean? Unless he heard the exact name, I think it's hard to give a name of who did it. But I think that her name might need to be given so that it's documented.
Yeah.
Does she name, I mean, she doesn't specifically name a person, but does she say it was her boss?
She does. She says it was her boss, but she never comes out and names who it is. So
Okay,
depending on the
well,
company, it could be multiple bosses.
it could be, but saying her boss limits the number of people, and so I think that needs to be part of the report.
Yes.
That's what she said.
Should DaCosta name Julia specifically, you think?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
Yes.
I think he has to in order for it to go anywhere.
Well, and to protect all parties, I think he has to protect her just as much as protect the company, and even if it is Ron French, I think it's to protect him too, because I think it's to just protect everyone in the company.
Now, do you think they would allow it? Yeah, I don't think that they would allow him to not give her name unless he was just like, I heard one of the secretaries in the area saying this. You know, do you think it's appropriate to just narrow it down in order to try to protect her? I think it wastes the company's time trying to figure out who it is. But I could see how some people would only want to give that much information.
So here's just playing off of that, Heather. If he were to only give that information and then the HR office or the legal office or the EEO goes to that department, maybe more would be uncovered. You know what I mean? Like, just as you were talking, I was thinking, well, maybe if he does it that way, then the company can go to someone else and maybe through that investigation find that there's actually, it's happening to more than just Julia, I guess, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, but if they were to go to court, he couldn't lie under oath. He would have to testify who he was talking about because the lawyers are going to press him.
Yeah, yeah.
So he would still have to name it. So what's the point of doing it? He should just get it all over with, rip the Band-Aid off, and just say what he heard.
Yeah.
Be straight up.
Yeah,
I think
I
that
agree.
a lot of corporations have part of their benefits is counseling, whether they pay for it or they help you find a counselor. And so I think that would be part of the way HR would handle it. They would need to know who it was so that they maintained her mental health. In regards to the situation, they would have an obligation to support her in that direction as well. So having her name would be important because how are they supposed to supply that health support if they don't know who it is?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Everyone's quiet, so do you disagree?
No, I think it's a big part of companies is to
Okay.
take care of their employees in that way as well as that mental health issue. I think it's bigger than it's ever been in regards to employment, workforce, I mean, everything. I think it's a really important thing for the workforce to supply, especially where the lady is in fear of losing her job. The lady has all of this anxiety based around what's going on.
And I think it would help too. I mean, if I heard that somebody I was working with was not only afraid of our boss, but also afraid of her husband, this might be a back door to supporting her in her whole life and not just at the workplace.
Ooh, I like how you brought that up. That because maybe they could provide counseling that will be for both of them. That then can help a lot more things. But you never know.
Yep. So since we're kind of already getting into this anyways, we're kind of talking about sexual harassment policies and procedures that could be put in place by this company. This next part, I want us to role play a little bit. And I'm going to assign each of you a role, and then I'm going to give you some time to think about it. So I'm just going to start from the left here. So I'm going to have Aaron and Heather. You're going to be potential victims of the harassment.
Okay.
Jennifer, I'm going to have you be the accused harasser. So Ron French in this scenario.
Okay.
And then I'm going to have, let's see, let's have Kelly and Lisa. You two are going to be the bystanders who saw what was going on. And then Sharon, I'm going to have you be the legal counsel.
Okay.
So remember those roles, and then this is what I want you to think about. It says, given your assigned role, identify the most important things you want to see in a new policy and procedures that your organization is formulating to govern sexual harassment issues. Be prepared to defend your choices, and other people may not agree with them. So,
Okay, read it again so we've got it.
yep, no problem. Given your assigned role, identify the most important things you want to see in the new policy and procedures that your organization is formulating to govern sexual harassment issues.
I would like to see for the victim that their word is assumed true and correct. That they're taken at their word right off the bat, that nobody starts to think, oh, is there a second motive that they're lying? I think that would be very important to, yeah, that's the first thing.
But hey, I'm Ron, and that's not right because, she could say whatever she wants to about me.
Yep.
Well, and for me as a victim, I would want there to be kind of like I don't know how to say it, but like a gag order, right? I want to make sure that anyone who's involved in this investigation is not allowed to talk about it. It protects Ron as well, but it protects me, right? I don't want him to go around and tell all of the other people I work with that I'm saying that he did this, whether if it's true, you know what I mean? That's embarrassing to me, and it makes me feel like I did something wrong, and I have to worry about getting repercussions from other individuals.
That's a good one, Aaron.
Yeah,
I
I
like
think
that
that's
one.
good.
Yeah.
So Heather, let me ask you real quick. So kind of going off of what Jennifer said, how do you feel about that aspect of your plan, kind of assuming that the victim is right? Do you think that is, I mean, after hearing what Jennifer had to say, do you still think that's a good policy to have?
Well, that was be my second kind of thing. And then, of course, I love the way you came back with, well, I'm Ron, I don't like that. I just able to prove anything, that anything happened. And the story talks about how he was very careful to make sure no one was around, nobody did anything. Um, Even if the only thing that HR can do is just move her, because there is no proof. I don't know.
Okay, and that's fine. Let me ask my legal counsel, Sharon, what do you think about how important is it that whoever investigates assumes that each party is equally right? So the
Yeah,
potential victim.
I don't think you can necessarily have a statement saying assume the victim is right, but in saying that, there has to be a way that when a victim does come forward, they have to be protected. They have to have I can't say this word, anonymity, and there has to be a safe way for the victim to be able to report this, and then I don't think at that point you have to say I'm going to assume you're right. I'm just going to you say we'll investigate this and find out what's going on.
So we should definitely look at and claim that each role has legitimacy to it, but not necessarily say that one is more or less right than the other.
No, but I think the victim has to be more protected, maybe in terms of not being disclosed.
Yeah,
Maybe.
But
the
as a,
legitimacy of both, but definitely the protection of both as well, because nobody wants their reputation slandered either.
That's true.
no, but as a bystander also, we've talked about gag orders and not talking about it, but I think as a bystander, I'd want to know so that I'm not putting myself in a position that could cause harm to myself. Does that make sense?
Exactly. Yeah, I was
Yeah,
thinking the same
absolutely.
thing, Lisa.
I understand the importance of protecting the victim and the accuser, but I think the biggest piece is like, I don't want to be walking into a room with Ron knowing that he's already had this other issue, and not being able to defend myself because information was kept from me to protect others.
Well, I think once that it's verified that that has happened and valid, then yeah, absolutely, people would be notified. But just kind of like the laws, for sexual predators, that people have to be notified when they're living amongst them.
Well, I would assume I would assume he would get fired if there was proof that he had done sexual harassment.
Yeah.
Point that they're talking about. It's not like they're going to be like, oh, you can keep your job. It's like, you're out of there. You have created a hostile work environment.
Yeah.
But it depends how their statement's set up. He might not be fired over that.
Yeah,
It just really depends on how their bylaws are written. It could be something that he could just be punished or put on
Probation.
probation. Thank you. I couldn't
Yeah.
think of the word, Kelly. Yeah, he could be put on probation, and with the trying to protect those both sides of the party, you could unwillingly have another problem on your hand, I guess.
But as a victim, I would be so embarrassed to have everyone else know about it. And I mean, it might not happen to other people. It might just be something that happened to me, and then everyone's going to know about it, and I'm not going to report it if I know other people are going to find out about it.
True.
Okay, so let me compartmentalize this real quick. So let's work on the section of the policy that talks about how to deal with basically a guilty verdict. So let's say that the accused harasser is found out to be guilty of sexual harassment. So I'm going to talk to the victims first, which is Aaron and Heather. What would you want to see in the policy? Would you want them to be fired outright? What are your thoughts?
Yes, I think if you're doing something like that and it's really inappropriate, you should be fired. If for some reason it's kind of like questionable, I think there should be a policy that you're not allowed alone in a room with another employee, and there has to be someone else there, or something along those lines. And if it's shown that you are not, that you have been alone with an employee, you're automatically fired regardless of what happens.
Okay, so kind of like a one strike.
Yeah.
Okay. Heather, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm trying not to use the gut reaction that's like, just fire him, with expletives in there as well. But no, yeah, that, I mean, there's so many, their door always has to be open, or yeah, there always has to be somebody else in the room, or oh, gee, I just, get him out of the whole even closed office. I really don't know. When I was a teenager, I was 18 years old, and I was in a vehicle with a bunch of other coworkers, and they were telling some off-color jokes and la la la, and I was just kind of going, yeah, just not saying anything. And then it did get personal, where somebody was directing things at me, and I said, okay, you need to back off now. And he kept going, and I said, I am serious, you need to stop. And then everybody else in the vehicle kind of was like, dude, she's serious, you back off now, and so I was thankful to have all the support of my coworkers, and I was able to kind of like say, you've crossed that line, you need to stop. And then it stopped, and it never happened again. I never had any issues, because that was where it ended, because and so I haven't been in her shoes I don't know. So I'm glad that there's other people that can figure this out.
No, I appreciate what you said. That's helpful. So okay, so now let's shift to our accused harasser, Jennifer. What are your thoughts on what should happen after, let's say, the harasser have been found guilty?
Okay, I'm glad I'm getting a chance to speak. Let me go back to what they were saying about what the policy must be. This is what we're trying to figure out, what the policy should be. If we look at the law, the case study reading that talks about the law, the accuser needs to first go to the employer. And then it says most mid-size and large companies provide formal internal procedures to handle the complaints themselves. But the federal law does not require them to do anything. I shouldn't have to be required to be fired. But there are things, I'm saying but you know what I mean. Right. Maybe there would be some training that would go on. Hey, this is inappropriate. This is not the kind of behavior that you should be doing, and have a required class that I would have to attend. And once I pass that test or pass that class, then, I'm just on a warning kind of situation. And there also, arbitration is one of the ways that people can handle this situation. So we can go to arbitration, and it doesn't have to be with Julia, because I wouldn't want to intimidate her more, if this was an unintentional thing. I mean, I don't think it is, but I think that's what he would say. If this was an unintentional thing, I don't want to make her more uncomfortable, so we'll go to arbitration, but in separate rooms, and I'll agree to what she will help, to whatever she needs to help her feel more comfortable. So if I can't shut my door when we're having a conversation, then I won't shut my door with her. But to move my desk out into the secretarial pool for this, is they're going to look at that and say, why? And that's embarrassing, and that puts more stress and harassment on me, which is not fair. And so I don't think that would be right. And I don't think anybody else should know about this, because, it is her word against mine, but I'm going to do what I can to make her feel comfortable. But that doesn't mean that everybody else should know, because now I'm going to be uncomfortable. And I just don't think that that's right. There, was I wrong enough?
That was good. That was very good. Okay, so let me direct this to Kelly and Lisa now. You're our bystander, so you're John DaCosta, who saw this happen. Mm-hmm. Is the training and certain I guess, measures that they take, not closing the door with the secretary in the office, is that enough? As from your standpoint as a bystander, you have to continue to work with this Ron French. Um, is what Jennifer said enough? Is that enough slap on the hands?
I'm torn.
Am I coming as a woman? I would probably say no, it's not enough, but I
Yeah.
understand a policy would say that it is enough because it'd be something like, I mean, you see all the time people have anger management issues, so they're required to take these classes, or in some of our vignettes, the people weren't speaking English clearly, so they were required or asked to take tutors. Like, I think, I think it's a first step that you have to take is allow these people to make the change through these classes. But as a woman, my gut reaction is no, it's not enough. You know, he made the environment uncomfortable, and it will continue to be uncomfortable for everybody who works there, not just her. It'll be a place that's uncomfortable for everybody because inevitably people are going to find out, regardless of the policy, what he did or what he was found guilty of. And it will be an uncomfortable environment for everybody involved for the foreseeable future.
But hey, Ron might say, you know, what are you uncomfortable about? I'm not attracted to you. I like Julia Martinez because I'm into Latin girls, so you don't have anything to worry about. You
Yeah.
know, so
Well, and
so
what if
why
it's
would it be uncomfortable if he's not doing that to somebody else? And I know I'm this is so hard because
you're
I'm
fine.
playing his part and I just makes me sick to my stomach. But
Well, I'm a woman. Like, I don't care if you don't find me necessarily attractive right now. It still could happen. Who knows? You might change your mind.
Okay, let's
yeah.
just real quick, just for
And
the devil's advocate here. Let's say instead of this exact scenario, Lisa, let's say that you and the accused are both females, and the potential victim was a male. Does that change it for you?
I don't think so. I really don't think so because I don't think um, for me, like if someone's feeling unsafe in an environment, I think you just protect them.
Okay, good. Yeah, I agree.
okay? So my
so
turn.
I have a question as Ron again. Um, just okay, let me put on my slime here. Hey, you know, part of what you're asking is what kind of policies we want. So how about a dress code? Because Julia's skirts are pretty short, you know, and she puts off that air, and that's what I thought she wanted. And when she hands me the papers, she leans over my desk and I can see right down her shirt. And you know, so if this is what's going on here, then let's do this and have an actual thing that you have to have your shirt up so far and your skirt has to go down so far. And hey, you know what? Those high heels are really sexy, so we should probably have a policy for that too.
Okay, is that fair?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but you are really being slimy. You're doing a good job.
Maybe I should be an actress, right?
There you go. You've missed your calling. Jennifer Aniston, move over.
Yeah, I think
Okay,
there
so
should be all policies for everybody. I think everybody needs to be protected in this scenario, whether you're a bystander, the accuser, or the victim, because you don't know if there's going to be false accusations. So going back, if you just automatically fire the person who's being accused, but what if they were innocent? What if it truly was that they didn't do anything and the other person was trying to get them fired? Then, you know, I don't think that should be in the policy that they automatically get fired.
Yeah, I agree.
But I mean, I think they have to be found guilty
Mm-hmm.
or with a reasonable suspicion or something of that nature. And it may also depend on the degree, you know, if it's just an off-color joke, if it's saying something directed at that person, if there's the actual physical touching, you know, there's different varying levels of how slimy and how far past those boundaries they've gone as well.
Well, I understand that, Heather, but that off-color joke could be as offensive to someone as the touch. You know what I mean? So I think you just have to have a clear cut. Like if you do anything that someone deems as being unwelcomed, then that's what it is. It doesn't matter if you think it's bad enough, because I know we all have different standards when it comes to what we think is okay in a movie and what's not okay in a movie. That would apply to this scenario as well. As someone might think an off-color joke's okay, where someone else might be highly offended and view it as detrimental as physical contact.
Yeah. And I think they should have in the policy as well that maybe once a year they have the whole office has to go through this
Training.
sexual harassment training.
Well, and Jennifer, back to you in the dress code. Most companies do have a dress code of how they say what they can and can't wear, and different requirements for grooming and all those kind of things. Most companies do have those in place to be like, hey, this is our dress code at the office. I have yet to see one, but I haven't read a lot of dress codes that
I have one.
specifically say skirts have to be this long, shirts have to be buttoned this, I haven't seen that, but typically it's, okay, men need to wear X, Y, or Z, women are required to wear business, casual, whatever the case may be.
Yeah. I have
Okay,
one.
so I'm going to pose a question.
Yep.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, I was just saying I actually have dress code at my shop. So I tell them, I don't, I don't want to see your breasts. I don't want to see your hoo-ha.
Yeah.
And we have a color. You can only wear black, white, gray.
Yeah.
And you need to look professional. I don't want to look like you just rolled out of bed either. And your hair and makeup has to be done. I mean, these are all the rules, before you start on a client.
Yeah, and that you agree upon your hire date.
Yep.
This is the bylaws. It's like my kids go to charter school. We have to sign all this stuff about their dress code, about their appearance, about everything, because it's what the location requires. Exactly. And what you agreed to.
Exactly.
Okay, so how something like a salon where you're doing a service like that, I'm just wondering, because at my children's elementary school, the secretary receptionist lady, it's embarrassing for me to talk to her because I can see so much, let alone when my son was he's 11 and 12 years old and has to go to the office, and here's this woman. And she was never fired for that, but her shirt was professional. There wasn't anything that said, there was no writing on it or whatever. It was just much more low cut than what I would have approved of. And so as an HR person, what kind of, I'm going to say support, company support, whatever, do you have to go to someone and say, hey, your shirt is too low cut? What's to say in the policy that you can't wear that? Like someone said, we don't have a policy that says how long our skirt has to be. Who is the one that says that you've crossed the line there? Do you have to have a complaint from other people that you're working with? That could be a sexual harassment. Like, look, I can't even deal with this woman that's my secretary because of her clothes, and something needs to be said. So how do you determine where that line is?
It's the company standards. So it's like, what kind of standards do you want for your company? Do you want to allow employees or secretaries to show their breasts, and that's okay with your company? Then that's your business, But like for me, I'm like, heck no. Like, I'm very modest in the salon, and it's professional. It's business. We have lawyers, we have doctors, we have nurses, teachers, we have all kinds of professions that come in, and we're not a hoochie mama salon, so so definitely out of school, I would have said something. I would have too. I would have maybe not said to her possibly, but maybe gone around her and said, I don't appreciate, I'm a mom, I come in here, my son's so and so, I don't think this is professional, blah blah blah. I mean, I even went to, I used to own a cupcake shop too, because I'm an entrepreneur, but anyways, I had a cupcake shop. I had a girl come in buying cupcakes, and she's wearing a see-through white shirt, and her bra was not covering everything, if you get my drift. And my husband was there, and we were doing and so he went into the back, and I said something to her, because I'm like, and she's like crying, she was pissed, but I'm like, hey, I wanted to let you know your bra is not on all the way, and you need to check yourself in a sense. But I said it politely, because I'm like, if she's going back to work looking like that, I would have been like, but I said something to her, and she didn't like it, but I'm sorry, it's just I don't know. To me as a woman, I would have died, and I hope somebody would have told me, if that happened to me, I would have been like so embarrassed, but I would have been so grateful at the same time that someone said something to me.
Yes, because our standards are different.
Yeah.
But I bet you people wouldn't think twice about that.
Right.
Well, let me ask this. I want to get Sharon involved here, because she is the legal counsel that's been hired by the company to protect the company from liabilities. Right. So we've kind of been talking about that different people have different standards, and talking about how the company could enforce the dress code and where to draw the lines. As the legal counsel for the company, where do we draw those lines? We talked about how, sometimes a joke could be just as offensive as being groped. So how do we enforce? Where do we draw the lines to protect the company?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really tough call to make, but I think you have to be very specific in the policy. If you don't want the secretaries dressing provocatively, you have to specify no cleavage should be showing. And, I don't know what you do on skirt height, but maybe, no more than, I don't know, 3 or 4 inches above the knee. I don't know what, in a business world, it's different than LDS, but I think you have to, whatever it is, and I'm not saying I know what that is, you have to be very specific if that is going to be an issue in your company.
Yep.
Okay. No, so I'm gonna come from a sleazy point of view here for a second. So, let's say there is a dress code, no cleavage, no skirts. Let's say that come up past the knee. Let's get real conservative. Could
Never fly, but
could,
yeah.
could employees claim that is sexual harassment for saying that they can't dress the way they would like to?
No.
Yeah, you worded it better. That's what I was asking, because
No,
you could be
because
saying, well, you're treating me differently because I'm a woman and my clothing choices are different than a man. I'm not going to wear a 3-piece man suit.
I would say no, because if you're coming into a new company, you give them the policy straight up at the beginning, they don't have to work there. This is what we expect. These are our standards. If you don't follow, that's fine. It's your choice. You don't have to work here. So I would say no, it's not sexual harassment. I would say these are our policies of our business and our guidelines. If you can't follow them, then we have to let you go, or you choose not to work here.
Well, what if it wasn't set up front though? Let's say like I come into work and most everyone dresses conservatively, but I, for some reason, have decided that this is appropriate at work, and it's never come up before.
Well, that's when the company would have to have a meeting and discuss it and have everybody sign it right then and there. I mean, that's the company's fault for not addressing
Yeah,
it.
I think if you haven't set the policy,
Yep.
you
Then
can't
you're
like get rid of anyone or do anything unless you set a policy
Exactly.
and have people
So-
sign it.
So that maybe should be part of our policy to make sure that every new hire is at least briefed on the sexual harassment policy.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. I think that's.
And then,
mine.
I guess to cover our bases about the degree of policy, you can have that no tolerance in your policy, that it doesn't matter the degree. If that's, again, like in part of the training or part of the new hire packet, that you have a no tolerance policy, that those are not accepted. And so you have the procedures in place for, what happens.
And I think you have to say any unwelcome sexual advances will not be tolerated. I don't think you can, make varying degrees of what's wrong and right or worse, and I think it just has to be across the board, any unwelcome sexual advances.
Mm-hmm. Would you, I'm going to throw something in there because I've seen this on applicants. Would you consider a hug sexual harassment?
It depends on if it's unwanted or not.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
Mm-hmm. So would you say hugging's okay at any business or any company, or would you have a policy saying no hugging?
I come from a family of huggers, so I'm pro hug.
Right, I am too. And that was one of my questions I was asked in a company. Do you think hugging is okay between coworkers?
As long as it's consensual.
Yeah. Well, it was a yes or a no answer.
Well, the military has no PDA, period. No public displays of affection.
While in uniform? Or altogether?
Yes, while in uniform.
Okay.
So are we feeling pretty comfortable with the kind of the bare bones policy that we've come up with? Is there anything else that we want to add to the policy, or are we okay?
I think you have to have the laws for reporting so that the company is protected.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Okay.
if you know about it, you have to report it.
I think that's a good one. I think everyone can pretty much agree with that one. What do you guys think?
Absolutely.
But I think there has to be some level of anonymity that is included with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's say kind of like the situation that we read about. Let's say that the person who was the victim, they don't want to come forward, but the bystander sees it. Is that still the policy across the board that whether the victim wants it or not, it gets reported?
Yeah. I think it should
Yeah,
report no matter
because
what.
it has to protect the company.
Yep.
I think too there's a power in not knowing who reported it, right? Like not even asking the victim I think is good, because when they're getting interviewed and asked, they don't know who reported it, and they might be more open to talk about it because they don't know what people have seen.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, what do you guys think? Are we okay as far as policy goes?
Yep.
After those additions? Okay, so I'm going to tell you what actually happened in this case, and then we'll do our wrap-up. So, it says this is a real case, even though the company and individuals have been disguised. So when Jack called corporate counsel, he forgot about caller ID. The lawyer used the information he gave to figure out the people he was talking about. She contacted the Lone Star EEO, which launched a formal investigation. The EEO tried hard to get Martinez to cooperate. French denied all charges, claiming that Martinez had made up her story to protect herself from pending layoffs. DaCosta was asked for evidence, but he didn't have any. Julia Martinez's husband found out what was going on, beat up Julia, and forced her to quit. French survived the investigation with only a bruised reputation. He blamed everything on DaCosta for calling corporate counsel. There was so much animosity between DaCosta and French that DaCosta left the company after 3 months. So, after hearing that, what was Lone Star's sexual harassment policy?
I don't even know if they had one.
That's where I'm at. Like, it doesn't sound like they had anything in play.
Well, I guess, I mean, they reported it, period. I mean, and I think the legal counsel person had to report it once they had the scenario brought to them in the first place.
Yep.
If they had their policy was, if you know about it, you report it. That's what the lawyer did, because then they were liable.
Right.
But French shouldn't have been able to know who reported it.
Right. So, yeah, this is kind of the worst case scenario, and it shows what can happen if nothing's in place. So Sharon brought up the anonymity. What other policies or procedures or training could have improved the situation for Jack, for everyone involved?
To have the training for everyone. And then I think they should have put the individuals like Julia and and French into some kind of therapy to deal with it. Even though I know French is denying it, but
or maybe in that training they could have not only have had the training, but also give victims tools of what you can do to avoid a situation. Like take the time to grab somebody to come in with you all the time. Or if it's hindering your work and you feel, I mean, giving them ideas of things they can do to keep themselves safe if they think that there's something fishy.
Like Erin said about documenting everything.
Yeah, and so that they feel empowered, so that they can do something to protect themselves and still be able to work and maintain their job. Because, yeah, we all foresaw that those things that happened, that it could blow up that way, and we were trying to avoid it in our discussion. And I'm really disappointed that they weren't all protected, especially Julia as the victim in the situation, and DaCosta from getting the blame, knowing that they were the ones who were the ones that were accusing French.
So would our little bare bones policy that we came up with, if that was in place, how different do you think this outcome would have been?
Well, it just makes me sick that Julia got beat by her husband. Like, that the company, I mean, she just kept becoming the victim in all of this. So I think if they had kept it, like we were talking about, where no one knew who was the accuser, no one knew who was being accused, and kept it confidential until all the stuff was found out, I think that could have prevented her from being beat up, because her husband wouldn't have found out, because she wasn't going to tell him, and nothing would have happened at work. And I think that might have protected her a little bit more.
I agree. Any other thoughts on this, our policy, and how it would have affected the outcome of this case?
I think I mentioned the counseling. Perhaps if that had been an opportunity for her, then she would have been able to have been counseled, I'm going to say, out of her slimy relationship with her husband, and protected her that way. It makes me sad that that's the way it turned out, and it makes me sad that DaCosta is the one that is taking the blame for himself. But it also is disappointing in reading all of the laws and whatnot, how much responsibility to prove is on the victim. Not only are they being a victim, but they're being victimized again for the majority of proof being their responsibility. So I'm not sure how to change that. I think it would be a continuing thing in politics that we would need to continue to work on, and something that we can set up in our own businesses so that we can be an example of improvements there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's something that I have kind of been thinking is, it's kind of sad. Well, it's very sad that this happened, but something that I also think is kind of sad is that there are aspects of this story that, despite policies and procedures or training, would be really hard to change. And one of those things would be that Julie got beat by her husband. That's something that, as an employer, you don't have direct control over. Now if they'd have got, Julia some counseling, she could have told somebody, but at the end of the day, there may have been nothing that the company could do to prevent that.
Yep.
So, any other thoughts before we wrap up? Okay. So for the final wrap up, I'm going to go one by one and ask you the three questions. What was most important to you? Ranking the overall quality of today's discussion from 0 to 10, and what the discussion leader did that you liked, and what could have been done better for next time. So let's start with Erin. What was the most important thing you learned from this case?
I think that I learned, well, first of all, I'm really passionate about this topic. Sorry if I came across like, but I think I learned more about how it would be in a business setting as opposed to just like a victim and a perpetrator. Does that make sense? And like thinking about other people in the business setting and what they need to do to protect them too. I really liked how you kind of kept us on track, and you kind of kept the conversation going well. I can't really think of anything that you could have done better, so there you go.
Awesome, thank you. And then from 0 to 10, how would you rate today's quality of discussion?
I think it was really good. I'd probably say a 10.
Awesome. All right, well, thank you. Okay, Heather, same questions to you. So what was the most important thing you learned from this case?
Yeah, like Erin, I definitely have opinions in this situation instead of it just being hypothetical, theoretical. it gets your feelings and your emotions involved, and so not all of it is completely a logical reaction. It's also your gut reaction. And Aaron, I like how you emphasize that, you had to think of it this helped you to think of it in a more global setting of the work and the business environment. And I guess the main thing is I learned that how important it is to protect everyone's reputation and identity, from being, whether you're the victim or the accused, or even any witnesses or bystanders, anybody who has any testimony in the situation. Everybody has to be so very carefully confidential, but in a small business setting, you can figure things out. So that's really tricky, and so it would be really important for your investigator to be very carefully trained in order to be able to go about that process carefully, without letting information get out, or without people being able to figure out who you're talking about. As far as Nick, I thought you did a great job. When you found out, we kind of went off on tangents, but amazingly, they always led in, or you were able to lead it into that next question. I thought that was fantastic. Maybe you just found the exact right comment that brought us along. I don't know, but so I think we moved along really well. I think everybody had a lot to say, based on the length of our phone call, which is good. We're getting a lot of feedback. I think everyone did a great job of not only looking at it from Julia's standpoint, but from the other standpoints as well, to help deepen our understanding. And so I think we also would be at a 10, because I don't think we would have, I don't think there was any lack of participation and an evolving of our thoughts and the way we try to refine our policy and the other things that we talked about, looking at things from a different perspective. I think we did a really good job.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, Jennifer, let's move to you. What was the most important thing you learned?
The most important thing I learned was the need for documentation of everything, to protect myself, to protect others, to protect my company. And I also was reminded of the role of integrity in our workplace. DaCosta ended up leaving a company, but I don't think staying and would have been worth the loss of integrity there. Julia may have been beat up by her husband anyway, and knowing that, maybe I'm not explaining this very well. I don't think that that his job was worth not saying anything. As far as you, I knew when you said you were going to give us assignments and role play that I was going to get Ron French. I knew it, but I appreciated that, because it let me think from his point of view and his perspective, because like the others, my gut instinct was for the victim. I think just because I am a woman, and it seems to be more prevalent that way. So having that opportunity to think from the accused point of view was really, really good for me. I loved the conversation and the different perspectives. I think it's a really hard topic to discuss in a small amount of time, because it is so emotional. But I think that we did well. So I would say a 10.
Great, thank you. And then we're going to move on to Lisa real quick, because she has to get going. So Lisa, what was the most important thing you learned?
Well, really the most important thing I learned is that it's not black and white. As much as we'd like to believe that laws are black and white, it's not the case. There's so many variables in every situation that it really does take a trained professional to handle some of these situations, and we need to understand as employees or employers what we should be handling, what we should not be handling. So I think that was the biggest thing that I learned. I think our overall class discussion, I think we do a great job. I think the one thing that we all need to work on is just being here on time. I think these classes are supposed to last about an hour, and that's why I hate to have to rush out. Pretty soon here, 2 weeks, the kids will be done with school and I won't have to go to work. But I think I've enjoyed learning so much, and I enjoy spending the time. It's just on days like this where I have to go that the time going over is a little harder for me. And Nick, I think you did a fabulous job. I think you pulled us in. You didn't let us go too far on tangents. You tied in the questions that were applicable not only to what we were talking about, but to what we needed to be talking about next. So I really, really enjoyed this group. I have a story that I'd love to share about, we talked about having people followed who are having problems, and I'd love to share it when we're not recording, because it is some confidential, not confidential, but just for protection of people that I know. So I'd love to share that story another time when we're not on a live feed. But I just wanted to, that's really about it, and I will see you guys next week.
All right, thank you. Okay, so Kelly, let's move on to you. What was the most important thing you learned this week?
I think for me, to make sure that there is a policy in place if ever I get a different job. You know, I want the protection. So that's going to be a big thing that I'm going to look for when I change careers and stuff, to make sure that there's some kind of policy protection. I agree with everybody about, you know, the documentation. I think that's very important to have documentation and to remember to do that, you know, if there is something going on. I'd rate it a 10. You were awesome. And that's it.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Sharon, what was the most important thing you learned this week?
I think for me, I can see where it's really easy to jump to a really quick conclusion on something like this. And as an HR person, if that's what I want to go into as a career, I would need to learn to have a more broad perspective and to be able to see everyone's point of view. Like when you did the role playing, that was perfect. So I learned a little bit more about how I need to just see things from a broader view and see everyone's point of view. I think that the meeting was excellent. Give it a 10, and I think you kept us on task and did a great job.
Alrighty, thank you. Yeah, I want to thank you guys. This was kind of a different group meeting than we've had before. We kind of split up into roles. I thought that was my favorite part, and I appreciate you guys like bringing so much to that discussion. That's where I definitely learned the most, and I thought that was it could have gone awry, but because you guys were all on point and we're focused, and I thought it was really good. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the broadcast right now, and then we can stay on real quick to just talk about doohickeys if we need to.